All right, looks like we got Joe back. Joe, are you there?
Yep, I'm here now.
Okay, all right. Well, I just kind of went on, while you were gone, I kind of went on a long-winded recap of how the game ended, the Indiana game. Crazy finish, probably didn't need to be a crazy finish. What were your thoughts on how that game played out?
Well, I was impressed. I thought we wouldn't win without Dawson. I thought that the fill-ins did much better than I would have expected. The combination of Alvin Ellis and Marvin Clark played way above their heads, and I thought were basically the reason this game was won. 30 points between them is something that no one would have expected at any point. The free throws were an issue, but that's just going to continue to be the case. And this game was really won on the boards, where MSU did a pretty good job both offensively and defensively. And also in terms of taking care of the ball, Indiana turned the ball over a little more than 20% of the time of possessions. So, and MSU did only on I think 11 to 12%. So that's actually something that's sort of non-traditional about this Izzo team, is that turnover rate is relatively low, given especially the amount of passing required to actually generate any sort of offense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was pretty impressed with those two things. To go on the road at Assembly Hall, and there were some questionable calls at a couple different points, I thought, but overall, in terms of home cooking, not one of the worst ref performances I've seen. So, but still, being able to go on the road there against what should have been a more desperate-looking Indiana team, considering that Crean's on the hot seat there, and also that their tournament hopes are on the line. I mean, they're right square on the bubble, so who knows what's going to happen with them. But yeah, I was encouraged.
Yeah, you mentioned Ellis. Now, I know we said, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, but I did say that when Ellis gets minutes, he plays pretty well. When he's just a guy who comes in for a possession or two, he struggles, he panics, he's always worried about making a mistake, then usually ends up making a mistake and gets pulled. But with the foul trouble that they were having in the first half, with being a little bit shorthanded, we saw a lot of Alvin Ellis, and he absolutely took advantage of that. With 16 points, he went 6 for 9 shooting, 2 for 4 from deep, only 1 turnover, did go 2 for 5 at the free throw line, which didn't quite understand why he was in there toward the end with the free throw team when he was clearly not doing well. But him and Clark, and Clark went 14 points on 6 for 7. Most of that was done inside. He had 4 offensive rebounds along with Costello, to lead the Spartans. So, like you said, I think the two of them were definitely the story of the game. And to have that apparent depth sort of spring up maybe right as we get into the postseason, I think is absolutely huge for MSU. I don't think we're going to be in a position where Ellis is going to be getting 21 minutes, especially since Dawson apparently has been cleared to play. But in those spot minutes that he gets, he should be more comfortable coming off a performance like he did at Indiana. So that moving forward, that should only help him. And looking at the box score here, I know Bryn Forbes, he had a rough one, 2 for 10 overall, 0 for 6 from 3, and for the most part, those were open looks. The right side corner there was kind of open a lot, and he was taking a lot of shots there, and he was missing most of them. But an aggressive Forbes is what I think they want, and is what helps the offense, because you've got a guy out there like Nairn who's not looking to shoot, so you need Forbes to be more aggressive and pick up that shots, and he did. So I think that was at least a good sign that he was being aggressive.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the other interesting takeaway here is that it's not that MSU went into Assembly Hall and shot the lights out from 3 and then emerged with sort of a win like that, like they did against Iowa. Yeah, I mean, and Denzel Valentine was 1 for 7, so between the two of them going 1 for 13 from 3, if you had told me that was going to happen before the game started, I would have told you that we were going to lose. So yeah, I mean, that's really nice to see that this team can still win, even in games where the 3 isn't falling at normal rates.
Yeah, and Trice went 8 for 9 at the free throw line, coming off that bad performance on senior day. And I've got a stat here I'm going to pull up that I put together after the game about Trice's free throw shooting. Okay, since February started, he's 14 for 30 from the line at home. He's 28 for 32 on the road, which is remarkable, stark difference there. And I guess the good thing you take out of that is that MSU has no more home games, and Trice has been good at the line away from home. So I'm curious what MSU's home and road overall numbers would be at the line. They went 11 for 20 in this one, it looks like. Another not good performance. And if you take away Trice, that's 3 for 11. That's really bad. And one other thing I'll point out. Colby Wallerman had a couple really good defensive possessions in that game, where he was matched up. Once he was matched up with Farrell, and one he was matched up with Blackman at the top of the key, which I noticed. And Wallerman was able to keep them in front of him. And when they drive, he forced a kick out twice. There were two possessions that stuck out. Wallerman did do everything on the score sheet: 2 fouls, 1 turnover, 1 steal. But I think he played some pretty good post defense there. So, Andy, you got any other thoughts on the Indiana game?
I think you're right about Wallenman. The situation that created him with one-on-one situation with Farrell and Blackman is not ideal, right? I mean, that to me shows like a breakdown somewhere in terms of the switching and team defense, right. And that's been something.
Yeah, with all the switching this team does, I mean, it happens quite a bit. I just thought it was noticeable that Wallenman was able to force a kick out when he was matched up with those guys.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it was fun to see, but yeah, I mean, that's Wallenman's ability to just sort of be solid defensively is something that is a depth creator, right? I mean, that's another, going back to what you're talking about with Ellis and Clark, knowing that you can stick Wallenman in there and he'll play some solid defense for a short span there is pretty huge. So the last thing is that I wanted to mention was I thought that the sort of underrated elements of that behind the back Denzel Valentine pass to Alvin Ellis is that.
Oh, that was pretty.
It was pretty, number one, but number two, it was the last bucket at the end of the first half, and had MSU not gotten that three, I mean, it ended up being a 2-point game. So that particular pass not only was pretty to watch, but also was hugely meaningful in a little 5-0 run where Indiana had gotten out to a 5-point lead near the end of the first half, got a Denzel Valentine jumper, and then that pass to Alvin Ellis for that 3 to tie it before the half started, I thought was a huge little mini run there in order to make this game sort of what it was.
Yeah, and with that pass, it wasn't just that it was completed. It was on the money, right where you want to catch it, and he zipped it in there. It wasn't like kind of a lob or something like that. That was just a play I think kind of got lost in the shuffle of how that game ended, but just tremendous pass. And that's the kind of stuff that Valentine, every once in a while, will show you that flash of what he's capable of. So next up for the Spartans here is the Big Ten tournament, like we said, down in Chicago at the United Center. Spartans don't play till Friday with the new double bye format. They'll play the winner of Minnesota-Ohio State, which, either matchup you look at is not pretty tough for the Spartans. They obviously lost to Minnesota at home this year in overtime in a foul or defend scenario. They kind of gave up quite a big lead late in the final seconds there, lost in overtime. And then the Ohio State game, Valentine hit a 3-pointer in the final seconds to give them the win there. And actually, the Ohio State game reminds me that Izzo said he was going to be team fouled there. Because of he had recognized a play that they ran, the half-court shot, Evan Turner against Michigan in the Big Ten tournament. So Izzo was actually going to defend foul there. Yeah, the Minnesota game, he chose not to foul, and obviously they hit a three. Now, if we're looking between these two teams, Ohio State's actually number 18 in Kenpom. He's given them 75-70 win, 69% over the Gophers. You would theoretically think Ohio State's going to win this game, but the Buckeyes have not been playing their best recently. They I guess neither have the Gophers. I mean, the Gophers have lost. At the end of the regular season, they lost 5 of 6, and the win was against MSU at Breslin, naturally. But the Buckeyes got shellacked at home by Wisconsin the last time we saw them out there. Between these two teams, matchups, who do you think the Spartans want to face? I know Izzo actually said he called Minnesota maybe a dark horse in the tournament because they've played a lot of guys close. Along with MSU, they've been one of the most. They might even be unluckier than the Spartans have been. But between these two teams, who do you think is the best matchup for the Spartans?
Oh, I would definitely say Minnesota. I mean, I see what you're saying here with the way Minnesota's played, right? I mean, that to start 0-5 in conference play, they lost by 4 to Purdue, they lost in overtime to Ohio State, they lost by 5 to Michigan, they lost by 2 at home to Iowa. I mean, they're better than their record, I think, clearly. And it's an interesting clash of styles in that game because Minnesota has guys like Mo Walker and Eliason who I think present a little bit of a matchup problem, but they also don't have the backcourt depth sort of to handle some of the guys that Ohio State has. So that'll be interesting. In terms of their potential matchups with MSU, I can't imagine MSU playing defense as poorly as they did in that overtime loss to Minnesota. I mean, to give up 96 points total in what ended up being 76 possessions, including overtime, is insane. I can't imagine that happening again for any number of reasons. It just seemed like they were pretty much lost the entire game. And also Minnesota hit some shots there at the end of regulation that were sort of incredible.
I made a comment late in the Indiana game that teams are when trailing MSU in the final minute, teams are like 100 for 100 from 3. It seems like, as bad as MSU's free throw shooting has been in this stretch, it's been magnified by the fact that teams make so many tough shots, to add on to it to get back in the game too. So in fairness to MSU, they have given up some unlucky shots, but
yeah, I agree with that. I mean, if you look at the stats that Kenpom uses in his study of fouling or defend, in both scenarios, teams that are up by 3 with 1 possession left end up winning 95% of the time, 90 to 95% of the time, regardless of strategy that they employ. So for that Maryland game at home to end up being a loss, for that Minnesota game at home to end up being a loss, I mean, to lose 2 of those games in the same season by itself is kind of, just really unlikely.
Yeah, and then you throw in the Illinois game that they had a chance to tie on free throws or even take the lead on free throws late, and they didn't. And then Texas Southern, which actually MSU had to come back late in that one, but also lost in overtime.
Yeah. So in any case, back to the potential matchups with Ohio State and Minnesota. So I think Ohio State just has a whole bunch of athletes that scare me, basically, and also that game where we played Ohio State, we won by 3 at home. We outshot them from 3 by nearly 20%. I sort of have some difficulty in assuming that sort of thing is going to happen again, and also Ohio State shot really poorly from the free throw line. They went 5 for 13 from the free throw line in that game. And these are just things that I'm not sure if they're repeatable exactly, and that scares me a little bit. And also, D'Angelo Russell had a bad game. He went 4 for 13 from the field, 0 for 2 from the free throw line. So it would be really helpful. It's going to be really, really helpful if we play Ohio State to have Brandon.
Did we lose you again? All right. Joe, are you there?